dog called them, you brought them.
What is going on, ladies and gents? HumbleZeus here with another video for you guys, and I apologize for the lack of uploads. I got sick again, my mistake, didn't mean for that to happen. But we're not here to talk about that. I'm back now, and I have a really interesting commentary for you guys. So, the game industry has been pushing, I guess, a new category of games, multiplayer-only games. And it's not really necessarily new, because we've had multiplayer-only games before, except they all just existed on PC, because console was never really a place for multiplayer-only games. It wasn't really fair to force people into only multiplayer, whereas now, developers are trying to do that, and I'm not opposed to it. Actually, I encourage it. However, I am not a fan of a majority of the multiplayer-only games in existence. So far, the only one that I found to be very enjoyable and that has actually lasted a test of time is Splatoon. I don't even own a Wii U, so that's very unfortunate for me. Most of the games that are online only, that can only be enjoyed online, only have a multiplayer aspect and have no campaign whatsoever, are kinda shitty, or are lacking, or are just fundamentally flawed. Rainbow Six Siege does not have a campaign. I think it's a good game on principle. I've played a little bit of it and it's fun, but it's trying too hard with microtransactions. It's just like, what are you doing here? And Star Wars, a game that, while the campaign has never necessarily been, you know, the biggest point in its favor, has always been fun, and it doesn't have it now. And in place of that, it has a few game modes that are relatively unpopulated. And I think this is the big problem with multiplayer games, in that if developers want to do this, they need to make sure there is enough content in it. With the lack of campaign, you have resources freed up. If you have all these resources freed up, then the multiplayer should be amazing. You know, the multiplayer should have the money that would have gone into a campaign and a separate multiplayer and put them together into one great experience, you know. And that means we should be having large-scale maps, these large, huge battles, very well and detailed designed maps that have really great balance, because if you're only working on multiplayer, that means all your resources are going towards one aspect of a game. And if that is the case, then that part of the game should be brilliant. I like multiplayer-only games because that means it's now entirely possible for developers to say, we don't know, or we don't like campaigns, we don't know how to make a good campaign, but we can make a great multiplayer experience. Or the opposite can be true. A multiplayer team can be like, okay, you know what, we never really liked making multiplayer games, but we'd love to make a campaign for you guys. And all of a sudden you have great single player games with beautifully designed campaigns, and great multiplayer games with fun and balanced multiplayer maps, teams, features, all these things that could be possibly available if they split up. Because, you know, nothing's worse than having, you know, let's say a great multiplayer game marred by a very bad campaign, or a great campaign marred by a very shitty multiplayer. Call of Duty is a good example of a game that sometimes some people say should just be packaged separately. Some people only want to play it for the campaign, and some people only want to play it for the multiplayer. I know plenty of people who own MW2 and have not finished the campaign. They have not even started the campaign. You know, it's sacrilege in my eyes, but they've done it. So as far as I'm concerned, there's an audience for it, and I'm sure developers would love to cater to certain types of gamers, people who want to play multiplayer and people who want to play single player experiences. But the problem is now that they're not investing either enough resources into doing that, or they have no idea how this works. Star Wars is a game I'm gonna kind of harp on for a bit, because Star Wars really should be an example of a game that should have had a lot to do with multiplayer. Obviously, the game was kind of selling on its multiplayer. I'm sure people were annoyed by the lack of campaign, but they could have survived without it. And I think the big blow to Star Wars as it is right now is that there's like 2 game modes that people really play. I don't own the game, and the reason I didn't buy the game was because I saw this happening. No one was actually playing anything. Everyone's playing one of the 2 modes. I think the one, like the hero mode, where you had to kill one of the heroes in order to become a hero. And then I think there was just one where you just kind of had to capture an objective. It's like domination for Battlefield. 2 modes that actually were played. Their campaign was some kind of fake, like, horde mode that had nothing to do with anything. I would have just said, take it out. Just take whatever you were going to try to do. Titanfall is a good example. Just take whatever you're trying to do with this retarded campaign and just make it a better multiplayer experience. You know, create something lasting. Splatoon did this. Splatoon! Nintendo, who hates online everything. They don't like doing anything online. They love local multiplayer. They hate anything online. Created a wonderful multiplayer experience that is still currently being updated, and that I'm unfortunately sad that I don't own and will never own because I never want to buy a Wii U. So it is a sad thing that, you know, Nintendo can do it and that everybody else who's been making multiplayer games forever can't just say, you know what, let's create a well-balanced and well-designed multiplayer experience. So again, I'm not opposed to it. I think consoles could really benefit from multiplayer-only games. I think the AAA space could benefit from multiplayer-only games. I think developers and consumers can develop and, you know, enjoy multiplayer-only games and create beautiful and fun experiences just as well as if they had a campaign. But I think there needs to be someone budgeting them saying, okay, you need to add more. You need to do more here. Because as it stands right now, most of these multiplayer-only games are forgettable. Star Wars is trying to push DLC. DLC, when people only play 2 of your game modes. 2 or 3 of them at max. You know, most people I know don't talk about Star Wars. Everyone was talking about the game coming out, and then once the game came out, everyone stopped talking about it within like the first 2 weeks. After they said how shitty it was, they stopped talking about it. Rainbow Six Siege, which people have praised a bit more, people have, you know, given a bit more praise, are still, you know, not really talking about this game because they're like, what is there to do? Titanfall was, I think, supposed to be like the grandfather of it, and still, that fell apart, and everyone was very hyped for it. PS players were like, why can't we get Titanfall? You know, PC players were like, yes, we get Titanfall to run on these awesome specs. Xbox players were like, this is why you should buy an Xbox One. The game comes out, and then after a few months, no one's playing this game. You know, no one's talking about Titanfall. Evolve, no one's talking about Evolve anymore. Evolve had, you know, a good idea in concept, a fun idea in concept, a 5-player multiplayer, and that fell apart. And I think this is just a big problem with the multiplayer-only spaces, that not necessarily are the games bad, or is it a bad practice. It's the people who are doing, you know, making these games that are not doing what they need to do. So I just want to talk about that because I think it's really interesting, that I think it has potential. I think the space has some kind of potential there. And it's just an unfortunate side effect that people are not really, you know, doing what they need to do with the genre. And again, it could do really well. I think there's a lot of potential there. A lot of people only like to play multiplayer games. Lots of YouTube channels are based entirely on playing multiplayer only games. So why not, you know, make them good, make them fun, make them enjoyable? I don't know, that's my kind of like rant on it, my kind of opinion on it. I think there's plenty to do in the space. I just think they need some work with it. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. I'm back. I should be making content on a somewhat regular basis again, hopefully, now that I'm not sick again. So I'll see you guys later in another video. Zeus out.